Hey folks, Robert Haddo here, and today I'd like to demonstrate a simple rehab series for pulley injuries in the fingers. This is something I went over with a patient of mine for an A2 pulley injury, and so what we want to do is work on building up a bit more mobility, then a bit more gradual strength and some assisted strength, and then finally functional rehab. It can be a bit of a drawn out process sometimes, so we want to really listen to our bodies when we do this. So one of the first things I want to start with is just kind of mapping out how I feel, just going over things. No splint, no tape. I want to start with some full fist or some angled knuckle exercises. I'm just going to flex at my knuckles. And if I have an A2 pulley injury, this is going to be one of the least threatening things I can do because this has very little to do with this. This is all A1 and volar plate. And so this is a nice simple way to just kind of warm up, and I can start introducing a bit of full fist movement. I can just challenge that and see how I feel. If I'm feeling stiff that day, I might have to go easier on myself. And then finally, half fist exercises where I'm really challenging glide through that A2 to A3 pulley. This is a bit more specific for it, and if I have any discomfort here, this is where my difficulty and my intensity is going to cap out for that session. From here, I want to work on just extensibility. Remember, a pulley injury isn't just a pulley injury, it's a hand injury, it's a U injury, and while you're immobilized, while you're recovering, the rest of your hand is also kind of falling behind relative to, say, if it hadn't been injured. So one of the things we want to work on is simple intrinsic hand mobility and control. I'm going to put my fingers and my hand flat. I'm going to work on lifting each finger individually off of a flat surface. And it's nothing major. There's no magic to this. This is just general interdigital conditioning. It's not specific to the pulley, but it's specific to my rehab. If I want, I can increase the difficulty by increasing the angle of my wrist and challenge it more so. That's really hard on my ring finger. It's hard on everyone's ring finger. And that's another one of those things I just kind of do to suss out how my hand feels. From here, I want to start exploring a bit more resistance. Now, depending on my stage of injury, I might use a ring splint like this, and I'll be uploading a file for this to Thingiverse for anyone who has a 3D printer. But this is just a ring splint that leaves a gap at each side for the neurovascular bundles so that we're not cutting off the circulation to our finger as much, but we can still get a great deal of tension across the pulley, a great deal of tightness on the pulley to really aid in taking the load off the pulley but allowing the tendons to glide. If I don't need it, I don't need it, but if I do, I just slide that on, saying it's an index finger, and I'm going to work on towel glides. What I want to do here is start with just that same starting movement I did before. I'm just gliding generally until I roll up some towel into my palm. And as I roll up the towel into my palm, as I start to fill that space, I can even work on squeezing against it and challenging some isometric. As I get more comfortable with that, I'm going to use my pip and dip joints. I'm going to really start using my fingers more and challenging that pulley more directly. And same thing, as I fill that space in my hand, I can start squeezing against the towel and start testing my isometric capacity, my ability to squeeze. I can try this with and without the splint to see if there's a difference. And if there's a difference, then right now that's a good clue that the splint is helping me. It's a good clue that it might be necessary through this part of my rehab. And as I get to the point where, for a safe exercise like this, my splint is no longer making much of a difference, that's going to tell me that I'm progressing to a point where I can load a bit more aggressively, safely. Finally, play. Fidget toys are absolutely invaluable. These are just some stupid little kinetic toys I printed out just for people to play with when they have hand injuries, and they are amazing to keep your mobility up, your interdigital control up, but with a very low load on any compromised tissues. You find something that works for you, such as this Prusa gear, and I just kind of play with it with my injured finger. and keep that mobility up, keep that inflammation from getting out of hand, keep that scar tissue that's forming as we adapt, forming in a way that follows along with our lines of force and movement, a functional scar tissue in there. That's what we want. But yeah, that's just a simple little series that I like to go over with people who have Pulley injuries and modify as I need to based on the finger, based on the pulley, and based on the presentation. If you want, give that a whirl. See how that feels. Thanks kindly.